Christ. Amen. As we gather together today, we come to Acts 26, verse 1 through 3. So now for the next week, going to be out of the office. And so I kind of ask that everybody these will continue to be coming up every day, but just because I'm not going to be doing it live in this format, it will be, you might have to look a little bit for it. So just go to the Berea website or my personal Facebook page, Berea Facebook page, and that's where it will be. Very easy to see there. Or YouTube. It'll be on that also. So we come here today to Acts 26, verse 1 through 3. And here we see Paul giving his defense. And that's what we're going to be doing this week and going into next week, because it's a longer section as we go forward here. Basically, the chapter 26, Paul giving his defense. Now, as he goes forward, he does use secular ways of sharing the gospel. He uses secular rhetoric, which is exactly what we're seeing here. There's certain ways of doing it, and Paul uses that rhetoric so that the gospel is more easily understood by the hearers. Paul could have gone off and done all sorts of directions and made all sorts of things happen and just kind of gone all over. Instead, he uses the form that the hearers know. Remembering King Agrippa had spent most of his time in Rome. You're talking to Romans. And so you want them to understand. And so you use their rhetoric, their way of talking, their defense to make clear the gospel message, which is what we as a church should always be doing. How can we bring the gospel message, Jesus Christ, him crucified, him come into the world for us, for our salvation? How can that be brought forward so that people might hear and understand? And different cultures, different people, different places, different parts even of this country, different parts of this city, it would be different. And so it's looking at how can I bring this forward to be understood? And that's what Paul is doing here. And he starts with these first couple of verses, very much niceties, sharing and bringing it forward so that they can understand. So Agrippa said to Paul, "You have permission to speak for yourself." Paul could have been railing. Paul could have been hollering. No. He waits patiently. He gives the respect to the people that are there. And then when the time comes, he speaks. And that's what he does here. And now the permission is given. Then Paul stretched out his hand and made his defense, something of that nature. Kind of another instance here where it helps us to understand that, Luke was seeing this with these kind of details there. Luke could have just said, and he said, and he's there and he stretches out his hand. You can almost imagine in Luke's mind seeing Paul and doing that, and then he wrote it down. So it's kind of those kind of details that let us see Luke saw what was happening in this public format. So he begins his defense. Now, verse 2. Paul says, "I consider myself fortunate, for it is before you, King Agrippa." So first start in rhetoric. You are addressing the person to whom you're talking. Agrippa. You notice who gets left to the side a little bit, Festus. But he's talking to Agrippa. And throughout, especially going first verses, we'll see this next couple of days, he goes to king. So he's talking to Agrippa, who will understand some of the nuances and the things that Paul's trying to say. "Before you, King Agrippa, I am going to make my defense today against all the accusations of the Jews, especially because you are familiar with all the customs and controversies of the Jews." Not as familiar as he should be, because he spent all that time in Rome. Nevertheless, he knows better than this new Roman leader that's here. So he brings it forward. You get a lot of this. So I beg you to listen to me patiently. So you understand this. Let me share with you. Be patient. I will get to exactly where we need to be. So you can see very much, and that's the whole thing here. Paul using what the format, even the form of the secular world to make the gospel more easily understood to the world. May we as a church always take the time. How is my way of speaking maybe getting in the way of somebody hearing the gospel? How maybe is it the way that we're doing something, stopping somebody else from hearing the gospel message? How can I use or change or adjust a format that more might hear and be able to understand the incredible good news that has been given to us?